What's up, guys? My name's Brandon, and welcome back to Apple Weekly. In this episode, we're going to discuss even more iOS 17.2 features and changes. We're going to talk about why Apple paused development on iOS 18, new iPhone SE 4 leaks, a crazy AirTag story, and more. And as always, if you want to stay updated with everything going on in the world of Apple, be sure to hit that subscribe button down below so you don't miss out on next week's episode. All right, so let's start by talking about some additional iOS 17.2 beta 2 features and changes that we did not talk about in the original What's New video. So the first thing I want to talk about is the spatial video feature for the iPhone 15 Pro and Pro Max, which of course we talked about this already. If you go into your settings, camera, formats, down here we now have spatial video for Apple Vision Pro. So you can record videos that you can watch back in 3D on the Vision Pro headset when it gets released. Now the thing I want to show you here is this is what it's actually going to look like when using the Vision Pro. So when you record a video from the iPhone 15 Pro, this is how it will look in that augmented space, in that virtual reality space when you have the headset on. So this is cool, and it's really a good thing that Apple limited this video feature to just being in landscape. You cannot take portrait videos with this mode, which obviously it wouldn't make sense anyways, but it looks awesome in this view. Now we also have some changes in the App Store with 17.2. So if you go to the games section, for example, or even just the regular apps section right here, you will see that up top, we now have different categories with little glyph icons next to them where we can easily categorize the apps that we might be looking for. So if we're looking for productivity apps, I can simply tap on that. And now it's going to show us essential productivity apps, calendar apps, and best to do apps, things like that. So it's just an easier way to browse and find the things you want to find in the App Store. This update also added a new option to subscribe and install all in one action in the App Store. And this was found in the code. We've also been seeing some changes to the Apple TV application lately, and it looks like the iTunes movies are now being added to the Apple TV application. So iTunes movies and iTunes shows are now being added into the Apple TV application. If we head into the music application, first off, you can see that the album artwork is still kind of bugged out here in the playlist section. It doesn't show I have album artwork until I actually go into the playlist, and actually right there, it's not even showing up anymore. So it's still a little bit bugged out, but I noticed that when you go into the album section here and then tap on the filter up in the top right, we now have recently added back. So before that was missing in the previous beta, so let's just go to all albums. So recently added is back in beta 2. And then we also have some changes to Siri, which it seems like these were also on 17.2 beta 1, but I never covered them in that initial video. And that is asking Siri for things like, what is my elevation? And you can see it now shows what your elevation is. I can also ask Siri if I'm navigating somewhere. So let me go into maps. So now I am navigating somewhere, and if I ask Siri, what's my ETA? Siri will now tell me that my ETA is exactly an hour and 50 minutes. So those are two new Siri queries that you could ask with 17.2. And I do also want to mention that the journal application is definitely better here in beta 2. It's more stable. I can do things like voice memos without the application crashing, which happened in beta 1. The recommendations always show up now, especially when you go to recent. A lot of times when you went to recent, it just would not show anything. It wouldn't populate, but now it is much better in beta 2. And then as far as the performance and battery life goes, since this update came out on Thursday, I really haven't had a ton of time to play with it, but so far it does seem a little bit better in both performance and battery life compared to beta 1. Battery life was an issue for quite a few users. A lot of people said their device got hot, their battery drained a lot, and those same users, I asked them for an update. This is over on my Discord, by the way, the Apple Den. I asked them for an update, and they've said that their battery life has actually improved with beta 2, but again, it's still kind of early. We've only been using this for just over 24 hours now, so it's hard to say for sure if things have improved, although I would expect it to improve over beta 1. And actually, if we take a look at my main device here, my 15 Pro Max, I'm using 17.2 beta 2 on this device. I've been using it ever since it was first released, and you can see my battery there, not terrible. If we look at my last 10 days, we can kind of compare, what we're seeing. I'm going to screenshot this so you can see it on the screen now. Looks pretty similar to 17.1.1. It's pretty crazy how my battery usage is so consistent. I mean, look at that. I'm using just over 100% battery most days, or just right below or right above. But yeah, so battery life, seems very similar to 17.1.1. I would not expect a major jump from the previous final version to the next final version, which is 17.1 versus 17.2. And I do also want to touch on 17.1.1 as well, because I am using that on my iPhone 15 Pro, my regular Pro, and it's been fine. I mean, it's really not much different than 17.1. It just has those additional bug fixes, but I did not notice any difference at all in performance or battery life. So I know a lot of you guys are probably on 17.1.1. If you have a different experience, please let me know in a comment down below. Okay, so now let's talk about what to expect next from Apple. So next week is going to be the week of November 13th. Now, we should see iOS 17.2 beta 3 next week. However, it is possible to come early the following week. And the reason I say that is because we did have 17.2 beta 2 release on a Thursday, released right there on the 9th. So that puts us in a tricky situation, but I would say that we could see 17.2 beta 3 really as early as Tuesday, although I think that's a little bit too early, going from Thursday to Tuesday. That's too, Apple doesn't usually stick to, really close dates like that for new betas. So I would say we might see beta 3 on the 15th or 16th, but if we do not, we would probably see it on the 21st. And then after that, it's hard to predict what's going to happen, but I would not expect to see the final release of 17.2 until sometime in early to mid December. Most likely the week of the 11th would be my guess right now. All right, so now let's move on to the latest Apple news. And let's start by talking about iOS 18. Yes, next year's iOS 18, Apple actually had to pause development of this software for a week so that they can focus on the bugs and stability, according to Bloomberg's Mark Gurman. He said, quote, "The delay, announced internally to employees last week, was meant to help maintain quality control after a proliferation of bugs in early versions. Rather than adding new features, company engineers were tasked with fixing the flaws and improving the performance of the software." So I know a lot of people are hoping for a more stable software with less bugs, but the reality is we've heard this about so many different software versions in the past, so I don't really see this being a big bug fix update. If you remember early on, people said iOS 17, Mark Gurman included, said that iOS 17 was going to be mainly a bug fix update, and then later it came out that, oh, we're going to have a ton of new features. So it's still too early to speculate on how iOS 18 is actually going to be, but it is pretty interesting that Apple did, take a week off to focus on just fixing up the bugs, which in my opinion is a good thing. Now, we also have some news on the next iPad Pro, which I've been long awaiting for because the M2 was not really a big upgrade over M1. So the next iPad Pro is going to have an OLED display and that M3 chip. That's going to be awesome. But anyways, mass production for the OLED iPad Pro is now rumored to start in February, which would mean that there's a low chance of these iPads actually launching in March. That's too short of a time frame, so it looks like we might not be seeing these iPad Pros until at least the Worldwide Developers Conference. And keep in mind that Gurman did say that we're expecting to see 11-inch and 13-inch iPad Pro models with those OLED displays, an M3 chip, and that new aluminum Magic Keyboard. We also have a fresh report on the next iPhone SE, the iPhone SE 4, which has been canceled, resumed, multiple times, but now, according to Mac Rumors, we have some fresh details that say that this iPhone SE is going to use modified iPhone 14 parts and the whole iPhone 14 chassis. So they're saying that it's going to have an all-screen design with Face ID. So it's going to be the first iPhone SE that does not have a home button, and I believe that's going to be the end of the home button forever now, so no more Touch ID on any iPhones. And this iPhone SE 4 is also going to have a single 48 megapixel rear camera, which is going to be a big deal for that phone. It's going to be an excellent value when this thing comes out, depending on the price, but they're also saying that it's going to be smaller and lighter, of course, than the iPhone 14. So if you missed the iPhone 13 mini, then the iPhone SE 4 might be a good option for you, since it's going to be small, compact, and also have, it's going to pack a punch. It's going to have a great camera, probably with that 48 megapixels. And I don't know, I'm just really excited for the iPhone SEs. I always am, because it's such an easy phone to recommend for people who don't really, care about the super pro camera and super fast chip and things like that. And then of course we have to talk about the iPhone 16 and some interesting news that's related to iOS 18. So it's looking like the iPhone 16 might get exclusive AI features in iOS 18, according to a leaker on X. So he said this: Apple is currently using large language models, or LLMs, to completely revamp Siri into the ultimate virtual assistant, and is preparing to develop it into Apple's most powerful killer AI app. This integrated development effort is actively underway, and the first product is expected to be unveiled at the Worldwide Developers Conference in 2024, with plans for it to be standard on the iPhone 16 models and onwards. So it looks like whatever Apple's working on with AI, which we've heard a lot about them working on AI lately, it's looking like those features or that application, whatever it ends up being, is going to be specific and kind of exclusive to the iPhone 16 and later. So Apple limiting software features to the newest models. That is just Apple at its finest. I'm sure it has something to do with the chipset that's going to be inside, but we all know it's probably just going to be because Apple wants to push sales for those new iPhones, which I can't blame them. This is going to be a pretty killer feature, I think. And then finally, as tradition here on the channel, we have another crazy AirTag story. Really not even crazy anymore. A lot of these are kind of the same thing, but it's just good to keep hearing them and keep reminding you why you need to have AirTags on your belongings. So this time, a man in Canada had been watching my videos and realizing how effective putting an AirTag in a car is. Not really. He just said that he saw others doing this, so he did it. But he said that he put an AirTag in there about 6 months ago, and just this past week, his BMW was stolen right out of the driveway. So according to the news report, the man is usually a careful person, but on this day, he was preoccupied by taking care of his sick, crying 2-year-old son, and because he was focused on the right thing, taking care of his son, he accidentally left the driver's side window down, and that was all that the thieves needed. So the next morning around 6 a.m., his brother, whose house he was staying at, realized that his car was missing, and in a panic, he checked the Find My app right once he woke up and got the news, and it showed that his car was at a motel. So they do what most people would do. They travel to where that AirTag was located at that motel, and they also called 911 on the way there. Now, thankfully, the police were able to recover the car and also most of his belongings. So once again, another example of why you need an AirTag in your car, at least one AirTag in your car, and also make sure it is hidden in a place where it's not just like in the glove box or something obvious where a thief is going to check. But anyways, guys, there you have it. That is the latest in the world of Apple, along with the latest on iOS 17.2. So hope you guys enjoyed this episode. If you did, as always, I would appreciate if you gave it a thumbs up. Also, make sure to subscribe by clicking that button down below. And if you want to check out the wallpaper that I used today, that is part of the opulent wallpaper pack where I have over 100 dark themed, very high quality, very, rich is what I call them, looking wallpapers that go really well with widgets and things like that. So if you want to check those out, that is linked down in the description below. But anyways, guys, thanks again for watching, and I'll see you soon.